Hello and welcome to Stylich Chats with Creatives. Today on the podcast, I've got Jason Mitchell with me. Jason is a photographer and Digi and works out of the Northwest. We have known each other for, I'm going to say nearly a decade, maybe a bit less. So welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to be on the show.
Yeah,
it feels
it's
very.
so nice to have
this
you.
feels very nice. I don't know. Feel like I'm on a radio show. This is great.
You've got your headphones on.
I know. I've
Little
got my headphones
interviewee.
on. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's it. How are you doing? You good?
I'm good, mate. Yeah. How are you? You all good?
Yeah, good. Yeah, good.
House coming along nicely?
Yes, yeah. Fed up of tradies, but there we go. That's a whole different kettle of fish.
I can imagine.
How's work been for you? Obviously, we're currently recording back into Jan, beginning of Feb. So how's your January been? Because I know some people have been a bit dry.
Yeah, the beginning of January was slowish, but I feel like it always kind of is. Like, I feel like a lot of companies are kind of coming back from Christmas and New Year and then still trying to figure out what they've got left over, what they need to shoot coming up. So I feel like a lot of companies are kind of like slow to start, or if they've got in-house people, the in-house people are kind of mopping up, and then as soon as they hit their like limit, so to speak, they'll start to look for freelancers here and there. But it's picking up slowly now, which is always good.
Yeah, it's hard to take that break, isn't it? Especially after Christmas, and you're like, oh, I've been so busy shooting everything up until like mid-December, and then
Exactly.
January comes and you're like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
They've forgotten about me.
Yeah, and then you start frantically sending out the emails like, oh, my availability for January, week commencing this. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, I've got the whole of January.
Yeah. The worst is when I feel like social media is probably the worst for it, because then you start seeing people posting pictures like on jobs or stories like, on this shoot here, on that shoot there, and you start going, well, why is my phone not ringing? But I suppose you just have to, it's always good to just prompt people, I suppose, to be like, help them remember you, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely a bugger for that. I'm like, once a week, I'm like, here's my availability, here's its update, here's more dates or whatever,
Yeah.
But it's nice. I think that social media sometimes can be, it magnifies the good parts, right? And
right.
these people that are booked now, they might not be booked like in 2 weeks' time or
Definitely.
So, but yeah,
or they're
I do
just showing
find
the good parts of the job, on this location and whatnot.
Yeah, they're not showing like having to do their tax or having to do their own social media marketing or like everything else.
Which pretty much takes up all of my January, the taxes and stuff like that. So one of the perks of being self-employed, I suppose.
Oh God, do you do yours yourself?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do. It's one of those where the first year I did it when I was first self-employed, I thought, how hard can it be? It turns out quite hard.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I've just done it ever since. It's a bit stressful, but once you get your workflow in order and like you kind of know roughly what boxes to tick and like what applies to you, it's more or less, like I say, a bit of a box ticking exercise, and then you have to pay for it at the end, which is always
yeah, that's
great.
always lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And they're like, you owe X amount of thousands of pounds, and you're like, oh, go away. But there's still potholes in my road. What?
I know. Liberties, eh?
Yeah. No, I've got an accountant because I just don't have a mathematical head. So I just go, here's all my books, here's my receipts, I'll pay for you to do it, and I don't have to think about it.
I know, but I still find that like a lot of the information that you have to give them, for me, that's the bulk of the sort of quote unquote stressful work. Having to go through your accounts and be like, all right, when did I get paid? When did I pay for this? Having to go through that for a year. And then also it's like the time of year that it is, you almost, it's a double-ended sword. Like part of me kind of goes through and goes like, I can't remember when I did this. But then I'll be also going through my accounts and being like, oh, this was that job. And I'll have like a little sort of like almost like a little mini flashback to like that day when I, had to get the train to Newcastle or something like that.
Yeah. It's I use a third party accountancy service now, so it tracks all my mileage, and like you can link it up to your bank account, and it tracks all your invoices and stuff, just so that I just send them my accountant a link to it, and I'm like, there you go.
Funnily enough, I feel like you were trying to get me to go with this company, and I was like, yeah, absolutely. Still haven't done that, but you know.
See, I'm a nagatha. Do it; it'll make life easier. But yeah, that's a really good system. But I have found that some companies, because it's sent via a third-party email, the invoices, that it gets lost in their IT systems, because they're like, oh, this is a strange, as though it's been sent from like aliens. They're like, oh no, we can't open this email because it's from, the accountancy service.
So
that's a bit frustrating, but most of the time it works. Like 90% of the time it works, and people just go, oh yeah, I'll click open that and pay it. So, all those phishing email people out there, you can do it.
Exactly. Again, like I say, these are just perks of being freelance, I guess, like, having to figure all this sort of stuff out. I feel like, go on, sorry.
Oh, sorry. You go into it going, oh, well, I really want to be a freelance stylist in my role, or photographer. And you think, oh, it's just photography, and like someone will just pay me. And then there's all these other layers to it, isn't there?
Yeah, too right. I think especially going from, like, for me personally, I went from part-time work to then essentially working for myself. It was definitely a bit of a weird transition, just from that perspective. It's just a bit of a mad one, going from being paid and then not having to worry about sorting all your taxes out, to then having to ask people to pay you, and then also have to like tot everything up and be like, okay, this is what I need to pay the government and all that sort of stuff. But
I think it's worth it though.
Bad. Literally. It's not, it's not too bad in the long run.
No, I agree. I think like Nath said to me the other day, was like, I actually think you're a better stylist now that you're freelance than what you were before, because you have to do lots of other things aside from just going to style for the day. Yeah,
exactly. Funnily enough, I was during the second lockdown, I went full time in a studio.
Okay.
And it was definitely different, because obviously going from only ever working in studios as a freelancer. I mean, obviously I had a stint as a permalancer. I know you've covered that in a previous podcast, but going from then being full time, and then like it's quite funny. I had like holidays that I was being told that I had to take, and I was just sat there going, "Oh, yeah, of course." Like, because I was still for about the year that or so that I was there, I was still in that mindset of don't take holidays, go to work, get paid. But then when someone's telling you like, no, like you need to take these holidays, otherwise like, you're going to lose them. And I'm being told to like basically just take days off and still get paid, was a bit of a mind fuck, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I definitely found, I did a small stint at a studio full time. I mean, I only lasted 12 weeks, but I found like then having to go and ask the studio manager for a day off to go to the dentist and get my hair done, and like a life admin day. I found that really awkward. I was like, I feel like I'm asking my mum. Yeah,
exactly.
It just felt, I was like, oh, I feel like a caged hen here, like not really a fan.
Yeah, it's weirdly, even though you're doing the exact same job for the majority of the time, it does feel completely different in a weird sort of way. I'm definitely prefer being freelance. Although like my time at the studio was great, great people to work with, great jobs to work on. Definitely improved my skills as well, because I had that routine where I didn't have to worry about, like I say, emailing clients and stuff like that. I just kind of got to go in, do my job, do it as best as I possibly could. Also like, organize other things within the studio, but then be able to like come home and then just be like, okay, now I can relax, was quite nice. Like the structure was definitely good, I think, compared to the frantic life of being a freelancer.
Yeah. I don't know if you've done this as well, but since the pandemic, I've been putting boundaries in with what times I'm working and stuff. Okay. So I'm like don't really answer the phone after 6 o'clock, don't really like look at emails and things in the evenings, try not to do any work on the weekends if I can help it.
Yeah.
You know, like the odd bit of prop shopping, is that really work? You know, we all love a bit of shopping, but
who doesn't?
Yeah. But it's just putting those boundaries in, I think, have been better for me as a freelancer. I think actually I'm lying. I don't think it was after the pandemic. I think it was after my operation. I just went, I'm having 6 weeks where I put an out of office on for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I was shitting my pants because I was like, no one's going to call me. No one's going to want me back. And actually I opened my emails and it was like, hope you're getting better. Hope you're well. Like, you know, and it was lovely. But having that clear break, I think really helps.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like for me, for example, when I came out of my full-time position, I was quite stressed because I remember actually speaking to a friend who's a fellow freelance photographer. I remember just having a beer with him and I was just like, am I still going to get work? Am I still going to be able to walk into the clients that I used to have and say, hi, I'm here again, back from the dead, so to speak. Can you book me again, or do you want to book me again? And I think it's like you got to show a little bit of faith sometimes when it comes to like contacting clients that you've not necessarily been with for a while, because they do remember you, and as long as you like put in the effort with them, they will, you know, reward you with getting you back in for work. So I was quite lucky in the sense that like when I finished the full-time position, I was able to get freelance work. Also through the fact that I've got like a really good network of friends who are in the industry. And as soon as I said to them, you know, I'm coming back to the freelance world, they were like, okay, sweet. Like there's this studio that's just opened up and like these guys are looking for work, you know, get in touch with them. You know, I think it's definitely helped me having like a really good network of friends and like, well, I can't even call them colleagues because they're mainly friends, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I do think that network is important, and I think it's having that trust that you being put in touch with another studio that they've recommended, that you're going to go and do a good job, and that you're not going to like backstab and take somebody else's work and all this other fears that can come along with being freelance. But I definitely found when I was down south, people weren't as friendly as up here. Yeah. Whereas up here, everyone's like, oh, I can't do this day. Are you free? Can you do that?
Yeah, definitely.
You know, it's way more networky and way friendlier. And also people are like, oh, have you tried this studio? Have you tried, you know, the same as you've said, really. Like it's a really good, I think it's a really positive thing, because we only then work better as a collective. And also then you go, say you need a fashion stylist. You're like, yeah, I've got like 5 in my books. Let's see who's free.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I think we can only as well then kind of unite in this pay battle, as well as like getting paid fairly by all kind of roughly having the same idea of what we should be getting paid. And I think that's how we improve freelancing for all of us, really.
Of course. And I'm never going to suggest to like a friend to like go work in a studio that I've had a bad experience with. I'm never going to be like, oh, go work at this studio because they didn't pay me on time. But like, you know, the work's there. Like, I'm going to say, oh, you know, this studio is a lot better because obviously they'll pay me on time, or, you know, the work there is good and the workload's not too stressful. And, you know, great people to work with. I'm always going to recommend those studios over the ones that I've had bad experiences with. And I'd like to think the majority of my friends probably would do the same, unless I've managed to piss them off somehow or something like that.
I'm the same. Like, there's certain studios that I'm like, nope, they don't pay on time, not going. Like, you know, I just think it's not worth no matter how much dickhead tax you put on to your day rate, it's not worth the time if they're not going to pay it on time.
No, exactly. You know. And like I've from that full-time position, there was other people at the company that were looking to go freelance as well, but had never been freelance before. So obviously I had a lot of people coming to me being like, oh, you know, like sort of like wide-eyed, like, what's it like out there? You know, what's freelance life like? And I'd just say to them, I'd say like, you know, sometimes it's great, sometimes it's shit. You know, it's like, I always describe it as it's peaks and troughs. But the one analogy I used with one of the stylists there, because obviously she'd been there for quite a long time and was a bit nervous about going freelance, I said like, and I don't know whether this analogy necessarily works, but I quite like it. It's like, say you work in a bakery, and you're making, I don't know, donuts or something like that, and somebody comes in and they buy a donut and they're like, oh, this is a really great donut. You're just like, oh, cool, thanks. Whereas if you own the bakery and you're making your own donuts and someone comes in and they're just like, oh, this is a great donut, you're just like, sweet, like, you know, that's my donut, you know, like I've created that from like top to bottom, and that person's coming to me because they're so in love with my donuts.
Yeah.
But do you know what I mean? Like I think it's really nice. It's really nice seeing clients come back to you and asking to book you when you know, just because you've done a good job. And like I said to her, as long as you go out there and you put your all into it, and you know, you're as helpful as possible, and you know, obviously don't take shit from people because you're new to it, but like just go out there and really smash it, the clients will come back. And sure enough, she's doing absolutely amazingly now, and it's so nice to see her like thriving, I guess, like, you know, in freelance. And I saw her not too long ago on a job when we were both freelance, and I was like, you know, really excited to see her, and I was like, how's things going? She's like, I love it, it's so good, you know. So it's really nice to see.
It's so lovely to see people smashing it, especially when they're a little bit nervous to begin with, and then they're absolutely like smashing it out of the park, and you're like, yes, go get them.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like, I call it like a confident cape. Like sometimes you've got to put your confidence cape on, and then you can saunter in and just be I'm confident, I'm me, this is it. And like once you get that going, it's easier to keep going with it and keep smashing it out of the park.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I suppose when I was full time and coming back to it, my confidence cape had been put in the washing basket, I suppose. You know, because you are just so you just get into that routine of come in, do this, do that, go home, and then when it comes back to, I mean, I like to say, like, you know, it's like riding a bike. You know, you can never really forget it. You know, when's the best times to email clients and stuff like that. But it definitely, even for me, after being like freelance for however many years and only being full time for a year, not even a year in the end, but I was still nervous coming back to it. So I can only imagine how nervous somebody would be who has never experienced freelance life before, I suppose.
Yeah, it is like we were saying earlier, so many hats you've got to wear. It's quite a balancing act. And I think if you've got decent support around you as well, then I think it only helps build your confidence. Yeah,
definitely.
You know, like I have a wobble every January. I'm like, oh my God, nobody loves me. And then Nafe's like, come on, hun, you've been doing this for over a decade. Come on. Like, we know that January's quiet.
Well, I mean, then also you have like these sort of, these like freak dry spells. Like, for example, I feel like last year, sort of like in the run up to Christmas, November, December sort of period, it was really quiet. And a lot of people were kind of turning around to each other being like, what's going on? But obviously, like, you know, because I work predominantly in the fashion industry, like every kind of business isn't like immune to like what's going on in the world and stuff like that. So, you know, whatever's happening elsewhere will always impact on business, full stop, I suppose, whether it's selling clothes or, I don't know, other stuff.
I agree though. Like
selling donuts.
Selling donuts. We definitely felt it before the pandemic was really announced. Like supplies were slow. Coming in. And then they were like, oh well, we'll just pick up from the week before and we'll just use the same stuff again. And it was clearly like a global thing, and we were looking at each other like, shit, there's no work. We're like, what? But obviously it was nothing to do with us. It was more the whole global situation, really.
I feel like that was a really stressful time as well, because obviously they had it feels so long ago, I've actually forgotten the name of the payment. What was the payment plan that they had in place for everyone? Oh God, my brain's just melted. I feel like I should have Googled this before we even talked about it.
So there was a freelance like a grant, wasn't there?
Yeah,
grant?
it was
Really?
like a care package almost, but like,
Yeah.
but for a big chunk of time, nothing had been actually said about people who were self-employed.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, a lot of people who were like, in full-time work were working from home or not working, but still being sort of like bolstered by this payment, which for the life of me, I can't remember what the name is.
It's on the tip of my tongue and I cannot remember what it's called. So people are going to be shouting at this now, being like, I know. It's this.
Yeah,
and
if you know what it is, shout out.
To yourself in the car.
I know, exactly. But there was like, that it felt like there was nothing really officially said for so long that I remember getting quite nervous at one point and being like, well, luckily I like save a lot of money for my taxes and stuff like that. So, I always try and have like a bit of a pillow in case work dries up. But that was a bit of a stressful time to be self-employed, really.
Yeah, I think I definitely felt stressed about it. And I like chewed through my tax money just trying to pay for the mortgage and the car or whatever, just to keep myself like vaguely afloat. Like I didn't want to lose the house, didn't want to lose the car because I need the car for when work did open again, and just it was so stressful. And then they brought this payment in for us freelancers, and then some people who were limited companies couldn't get it, and then I'm still paying it back from the government because they're like, oh, we'll tax you 20% on that because technically earnings, and you're like, fuck off. Like,
let's not get back into taxes.
No, it was
that was probably one of the like the starts of the podcast where people just go, oh, a tax podcast, what?
But yeah, it was very stressful, but like I'm glad we're all out the other side, and I think we've all come out of it, I hope, better. And I feel like everyone's gone, actually, my boundaries are here and I'm happy to do this, but I'm not happy to look at stuff in the evening or whatever. Yeah. And I think people are actually much more respectful of how valuable their freelancers are. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, speaking from like a setting boundaries perspective, for me personally, before the pandemic, I was very much like all guns blazing, work. Like you've got to constantly be working. And sort of after, we came out of the lockdown and stuff like that, I had like a new appreciation for like time and like my own time and taking time for myself, and not just constantly like breaking my back over work. To the point where I would give myself days where, like, say I had a client get in touch with me, but I was quite lucky in the sense that I had been working a lot, but I needed a day, just to, like you say, a life admin day. I wasn't stressing over saying no. And I think that's quite important, not to like reach to that burnout phase when it comes to, chasing clients and stuff like that, and always wanting to be working. It's still like a great mentality to have. And, I always say that, like, to be self-employed, you do have to have that drive to constantly be wanting to work. But there's a limit to that where you will just end up burning yourself out and just being like, fuck, why am I doing this?
Yeah, I think you need to have that balance, which I think the same as you, the pandemic really showed me that, like, I need to still have maybe not even a day a week off, but like a day to go and sort my own shit out and to chill out and to go and see friends and, and just have that decompressing day, because otherwise you can literally work yourself into the ground. Yeah. And what for? So you've got a few extra grand in the bank where you like go on holiday. Do you know what I mean? Like, we all need that.
Yeah, exactly. I think, that's, I think R&R is definitely needed in a lot of situations, especially because, it's quite an intense job at the end of the day. It might not seem like it in comparison to other jobs, but, I often say, like, at the end of a shoot, when it's quite an intense one, like my social batteries almost run out, and like, sometimes you need to just like have that bit of time to decompress. And I feel bad. I'll come home or like see my family and they'll be like, oh, like, what have you been working on this week? And I'm just like, I just need a second not to talk about work. Like, can we just talk about anything else but work? But I can understand for them, they're just like, they're curious because it's like a pretty interesting job at the end of the day. I know we take it for granted sometimes, like being in the industry, but even like a lot of my friends will be like, what have you been working on this week and stuff? So not to mention whenever I've done like lighting, for example, or like, you know, on big jobs, like, you know, physically I'm knackered from lifting fucking big stands all over the place, up and down stairs, which, you know.
Yeah. They're like, I was on like quite a big shoot just before Christmas doing the still life part of the shoot, like the props and stuff. And I think there was 2 videographers, 2 assistants, a digi, and the photographer. Like the whole like visual team was quite large. And all the lads came in shorts, right? Yeah. And that's not sexist. They all just were guys, and they're all in shorts. And I was like joking with them. I was like, guys, it's bloody November. Why are you in shorts? Literally by 10 o'clock, they were sweating their bollocks off. Just lifting lights, stands, everything. And those Tuscan lights, the big, like
tungsten
huge,
lights.
Tungsten, that's it. Yeah. They weigh an absolute ton.
Yeah. They're huge. And they get really hot.
And then the barn doors are like really hot, and someone's like, can you just shut the barn doors a bit, and like sizzling your fingers off?
Exactly. No, definitely finding something like robust to be able to like tap those barn doors in is definitely going to save you a couple of fingerprints anyway.
A broom handle.
I know. I was working on a job once, and for some reason, I mean, nobody's ever going to take into account how the lighting assistant feels at the end of the day, but we were shooting in a old schoolhouse, I want to say it was, and obviously there's like loads of like really like long rolling staircases, and like so they were like, okay, so we're going to shoot down here to start with, and then we're going to go upstairs to this room where we want this set up, and then we're going to come back downstairs and we're going to need this here. And honestly, I was dripping with sweat. And then at the end of the day, when we were loading out, because it was only me doing the lighting, and I think I was doing both lighting and I was digiing a little bit, but the photographer mainly took over the digi sort of side of things because it wasn't too intense. And at the end of the day, one of the producers came over and they were like, oh, do you want me to give you a hand with one of those stands? I was like, no, it's okay. And they're like, no, go on, I'll give you a hand. They picked up this stand and instantly they just put it back down. They're like, actually, like, no, like you can crack on with that. Thanks very much, mate. It just left me there sweating, huffing and puffing. But yeah.
So for listeners who don't know what a digi is, can you explain what a digi is?
Okay, so a digi, or a digital assistant, digital tech assistant, essentially, it's your job is essentially what. Oh god, I need to get this straight in my head before I actually just blurt out random words. It's essentially file management as well as like image. What I can only describe as image monitoring. So the job will essentially be setting up the computer so that all the images come in, they're all shown so that the clients can see it or the photographer can see it, and you've got to make sure everything's like pretty much like perfect, because on shoots, as you know, like it can be a bit hectic, and it's like hit the ground running sometimes, especially on these bigger like location shoots, or you know when you like kind of a bit rush for time. So coming from a background where I've been both the photographer and the digi, I can definitely tell you that having a digi on a job definitely makes your life as a photographer a lot easier, especially one who knows what they're doing, because you can just kind of say, we need this. All they need to really focus on is either like sorting out the lighting or instructing like the lighting assistant what to do, and the actual file management and making sure the images look right is kind of like left to them, as well as making sure that like there's copies of hard drives being made at the end of the day, and like, you know, contingency hard drives and stuff like that in case, you know, one goes up in flames for some reason. There's always backups and stuff like that. So essentially like it's the only way I can really describe it is like file management, and like, you know, making sure everything's going exactly where it should be, nothing's being deleted, everything is nice and safe at the end of the day. Is the best way. I've probably butchered that, but you know.
No, I think that's like, I've worked with digis, but I've not really ever had time to look over their shoulder and be like, oh, what are you doing? I know it's a bit of file management, but so do you guys, when you're digging, do you crop the images as well, or is that left to the photographer in edit? Or
it depends. Like some photographers will like sit down and be like, say it's a creative shoot, they'll want to be very hands-on with the initial sort of like look of the image, and like even down to like say the cropping and stuff like that. Or sometimes they'll just be like, you have a crack at it and I'll just fine tune it. It kind of comes down to like your relationship with the photographer and how you can sort of like, they'll know whether you've got the right idea, basically, for having worked with you in the past, or like, you know, having seen your work in the past or heard about your work in the past. It also helps that you can kind of be like sort of the middleman between them and the client sometimes, because sometimes people will be asking questions and they'll be like breaking their back on a shoot, and you can kind of be like, oh well, you know, this is the image here, and like, you know, be like, this looks great, you know. You kind of like part-time hype man as well, I find. As well as like, you know, guardian angel, because if something like looks soft or like the light doesn't look quite right, you're the first person to see it, and you're the first person to be able to like tell them, you know, oh, you need to adjust this, or that needs adjusting, or check your focus and stuff like that. Yeah,
because often these big shoots are so fast paced. You do a bunch of like, you might do like one look as such, but maybe get like 5 different shots out of it. But in order to get those 5 final shots, you need to take probably about 200 images.
Oh yeah, like, you know, thousands sometimes in certain circumstances. Yeah, like obviously you want to be on a shoot that's nice and chilled, where like everything's been timed properly. But again, as you know, and any other freelancers that worked in the creative industry on these kind of shoots, like the time management kind of goes straight out the window as soon as you set up for at the start of the day. You know, you're running like 10 minutes behind, and then the talent turns up and they're like, okay, so you've only got 5 minutes for this person, but like you end up shooting for like, say, 7 minutes, and then like the next person, and then someone's late, and then you're waiting around for ages and stuff like that. But no, it's they're great. I love them, honestly. Like, I think that's one of the reasons why I still do a lot of digying or lighting assisting and stuff like that, because being on those shoots is just so much fun. You know, if I can't shoot it, I want to work on it somehow, put it that way.
Yeah, that's good. So how did you get into digying and photography? What's your kind of route to this point, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Okay. Inhales, takes deep breath. So I've been in the industry, working in and around studios for about, I want to say like 12-ish years now, maybe coming up on 13. Essentially, the standard photographer story, you know, parents had a camera, I used to really enjoy it when I was younger and stuff like that. But I initially got into it because I used to watch a lot of like parkour videos and stuff like that. And one of my friends would come out and take photos of, like, you know, me and my friends when we were a lot younger doing mad stuff on, you know, whatever. And I really got into it that way because I was like, could see my friend taking all these photos, and I was just like, that looks sick, that looks so good. And my uncle is a photographer as well.
Cool.
Well, he's retired now, but yeah, he's I mean, can you ever really retire? He takes an amazing like street photography stuff. But he was working in as a freelance photographer for quite a long time, but he became in-house eventually with this this studio house that I eventually met you at. And my nan is also a seamstress, so she'd work alongside him a lot of the time, and she was also at this studio house. So they could see me sort of gravitating slowly towards photography, but I always I never really knew what I wanted to do. I found like in high school they were always kind of like, you got to decide what you want to do for the rest of your life right now while picking your GCSEs and A levels and stuff like that, and like whatever you choose now is basically going to mean like you either do great in life or terrible, which, you know, I think is a bit of a backwards way of doing it, like trying to force people to figure out what they're doing for the rest of their life at such a young age. And so I took media studies at college. Funnily enough, I failed my first photography assignment like miserably, like so bad, to the point where I had to retake it. And in the interim of like failing and retaking it, I'd picked up photography, and like started like, you know, taking photos of like friends' cars and stuff like that. And I essentially went from like completely and utterly failing it to like getting like one of the highest grades, because I'd like just found an enjoyment for it rather than seeing it as an assignment that my like college was assigning me, and I was like having to just crack on with it. I was like taking a now hobby and like creating work with it. So I fast forward like a year or two, I was working part-time, and my nan basically said, oh, this studio that I work at needs a like studio assistant, someone to come in, you know, help out, you get a bit of money. And I was like, all right, sound. So, you know, came in, and she was pretty much like, just be helpful, be useful, and you'll be fine. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So there's me sort of like going in to like sort of make cups of tea, prep food, you know, not food, prep clothes and, you know, shoes and whatnot. And funnily enough, because she's a stylist, a lot of the times they just say like, oh, go steam these clothes to me. And I am utterly terrible at steaming, like to the point where I'd be coming away with like, you know, the water condensing and like dripping onto my hand, and all you can hear is me just like going, shit, fuck, like in the corner, burning my hands, to the point where like my nan would come over and be like, look, like you're good at a lot of things, but steaming is not one of them. So like, you can go fucking talk about a camera or something like that.
At least she was honest.
She was honest. But yeah. So yeah, she'd always be very good at like pushing me and always introducing me to people, and like essentially showing me like the beginnings of like networking, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know, she knew I was interested in videography, so she'd be like, oh, this guy is like the videographer down the road, you should go talk to him, blah blah. And then like in true Nan style, she'd like scream him across the studio and tell him to come and talk to me and stuff like that, as I like this like very like young lad just kind of nervously stood there being like, oh, I like video cameras too, you know, that sort of stuff. But yeah, like photography was never something I really wanted to like really get into. I always wanted to get into videography. But then just over time, I just started to gravitate more towards photography. And then I went off to uni to do media studies. So it was like photography, videography, and audio. Mm-hmm. And I was at like not a great college. Like I got in, you know, with unconditional or something like that. And essentially when I spoke to the tutor, it sounded like the course that I was going to be doing was essentially the exact same as the course that I'd done at college. I would just be get a degree for it, essentially.
Oh, okay.
So I was just kind of like, oh, okay, easy degree. But I started working at the studio in between, you know, my lecture dates, which only had 2 days in uni a week, so it meant that I could like fill up my time in the studio. And eventually they asked me, they said, you know, how would you feel about coming in Monday to Friday and just being our in-house studio assistant? And obviously I was like, yeah, that'd be amazing. So I go and speak to my uni, and I'm just like, oh, you know, there's this really amazing opportunity for me. Essentially it'd be kind of similar to like the job I'd be trying to get coming out of uni, I suppose. Can I go for it? And I'll just like essentially turn my course into a distance learning course, I suppose. And they're like, yeah, cool. This is in my second year of uni, I think. So I go off and do that. Sure enough, work at the studio and send work in as and when I can. And then it comes to my like re-enrolling for my third year, I think is what it's called. Like, you know, when you basically go in your first day and say like, I'm still here. So I turn up, and they're like, my tutor like sees me, he's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, I'm here to like, start my last year. Let's get this degree, And he's like, he's like, we've ejected you from the course for poor attendance. And I was like, what? Yeah. So I got, basically they said, we've ejected you for poor attendance because essentially somebody hadn't filled out paperwork or whatever to say that I wasn't going to be coming in all the time. And they'd just seen me as like not bothering to turn up. So they were like, we can't even really offer for you to like go back a year because nobody has taken the course after you at this uni because it wasn't a very good uni. So they were just kind of like, my tutor kind of sat there and he was just like, oh yeah, well, we can like offer you what was it? It was like further education credits, which is like kind of like he tried his hand at a degree, but he didn't quite make it. So like, here's some like, you did all right. Like
a bronze star.
Yeah. Maybe not even a bronze star, maybe like a fucking shit star. But yeah, so like I kind of went back to the studio, like kind of like trying to reassess what I was going to do with my life. Because at that point I'd been told like, you need a degree. And the studio manager that was working there at the time, like she obviously knew that I was taking like a day to go to uni. And when I came in the next day, I was just kind of like, looking like, white as a ghost, just kind of being like, what's going to happen now? Yeah. And I asked her if I could have a chat with her and I explained the situation. She just said to me, she was just like, right, what I want you to do is focus as much as you possibly can on creating and working on a portfolio while you're here. Because she said, if you continue to go freelance throughout your life, no one's ever going to ask you for a CV. They're always going to say, can I see your book? Can I see your book? Can I see your book? So I really took that on board and threw my all into studio assisting, as well as like in my spare time, maybe even staying out late after work and like, using the facilities there. I was quite lucky that I was able to use the facilities to create a still life portfolio. And, eventually they asked me to go from being a studio assistant and just looking after kit and doing some set building and this sort of stuff to eventually be one of their junior photographers. And I just threw myself at that as well, doing a lot of still life stuff, a lot of shoes. It was fantastic. And I was there I met you there. I don't know how long I was there for. Probably, like I say, it's coming up on me working freelance for about 12, 13 years. I must have been there for about 7 or so. As like a permalancer, studio assistant, junior photographer sort of situation.
I think I turned up in 2016, possibly.
Yeah.
And I remember, because you might not have been there, but I remember me and Nath were putting our washing machine and stuff into the new house when we moved up here.
Yeah.
And we broke our washing machine as we were lifting it out of the van, left it on the side. And then Nath at that time was still having to work down south. And somebody came along, like a metal scrap guy, and like stole our washing machine because it was left on the drive. They just nicked it. And so I remember coming in and I was like, is this like a normal thing for city living? Because me and Nath hadn't lived in the city for a long time. Yeah. And they were like, yeah, that's completely normal. If you did not put a note on it, they just would nick it. Yeah. So we'd like paid, I don't know, like Currys or whatever to pick up, to exchange, when they drop off your new one, to take the old one. And so we paid for nothing, basically. I was like,
mate.
God's sake.
Oh, so no. Annoying.
But that was 2016, because we got married in the 2017.
Wow.
Which feels ages ago.
It feels so long ago.
Yeah.
I mean, even 2020 feels like a lifetime ago.
Oh God, yeah, doesn't it just?
I know, but I mean, I feel like I've been doing it for ages, and I feel like it's I don't know. I feel like I'm hitting like a bit of a creative lull at the moment, where like I feel like I've been doing it for so long, but I also feel like I'm not really like pushing myself any further. And normally I'd have an issue with that, but at the moment I don't know, for some reason I've not really been that bothered about pushing myself, like creatively at least.
Yeah.
I used to like enjoy testing a lot, whereas these days I've kind of slowed down with that. And that's always my advice for anybody who's looking to get into the industry is just test, get a portfolio, test, keep pushing yourself. But I think I don't know, maybe it's just over time I've just kind of like slowed down a little bit. And I don't know, maybe it's just like doing it for quite a while. I've kind of, I don't know what the word is, but just kind of petered out.
I think also you test a lot out of necessity when you're trying to pitch for other work as well.
That's true.
And then once you're well known within your industry for your niche, the need for testing gets pushed back. Me and Jordan actually chatted. We always said cash is king, and we used to do like test magic where we'd book a test in, and then we'd always end up with work. And I think that's it. Is paid work always comes first.
Oh yeah, too right. And
also, going back to your like R&R thing, we're all coming out of this pandemic, or some would argue we're still vaguely in it, but we've all come out and gone like, what the fuck was that? So it's just a sense of reevaluation, isn't it? And just what's important to you. And sometimes that creativity does dwindle a little bit.
Yes.
And I think that's perfectly normal, to be honest. And also, I don't know if you're doing more fashion than I, but I'm seeing fashion where I'm like, oh God, I wore this when I was 12. And I'm finding like that's weirding me out a bit. Like I feel like I can't do a test with this stuff because it's a bit weird.
I feel like my issue, I suppose, at the moment when it comes to testing is that nothing's original,
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to, whenever I do something that's like I'm a bit of a perfectionist at the end of the day, and I want whatever I put out there, whether it even just if it's on Instagram or whether it's something going into my book, I want it to be something that I'm really proud of. But at the same and original at the same time. But at the same time, like it's everything. It almost feels like everything's been done, and you've just got to try and find your own little like way of tweaking it, I suppose. But it gets hard when you're like, you have like this amazing idea and you're like, oh my God, this would be great. I'll get this model in and I'll do it in this location, or I'll get this kind of lighting. And then you're like going through trying to do your mood board and you find pretty much the exact same shot and you're like, And don't get me wrong, like recreating work, not like ripping off work, but like when it comes to like a test, if you want to like recreate lighting because you like the look of lighting, like that's great, but like almost like ripping off work completely.
Yeah.
Like some people might be okay with it. I personally would, like I say, I want my work to be my own. Yeah. And I feel like if I was to, put something out there that's not 100% me and I'm not 100% happy with, I'd almost like rather it not be out there, I suppose. So I think I'm in that period now where I'm trying to find my groove again, trying to find like the sort of like the direction I want to be going in.
Yeah.
Especially after so long being in-house, I feel like that part of me is kind of like not been swept under the rug, so to speak, because I was able to be really creative there and I did some really nice shoots, but I don't know, just doing it in a freelance sense, I feel like you just need to get your confidence back with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and maybe because you were full-time and everything else that was going on globally, it's kind of like just made you feel a little bit lost. But also in these moments where you're feeling a little bit lost, here comes the wise old sage, sometimes that's where you find the most creative stuff, when you just like sit back and like not completely remove yourself from it, but like just relax about it, other stuff comes through. And I think that you might find that there's something that you think, oh actually that's start of this idea. But I agree with you with the testing lighting and stuff like that. It's fine to almost figure out what somebody else has done, isn't it, really? That's essentially what we use mood boards and things for. Yeah, and I think that's great to then, you're almost learning a new skill, aren't you, again, and being like, oh yeah, okay, so they've lit like this. And it's good to practice those kind of things, even if they don't go out into the world.
Oh, no, exactly. I know some lighting assistants who are like, you can show them one image and they'll know exactly how it's shot. Wow. And they are fantastic. And I mean, fantastic lighting assistants. Like, they just get it spot on every single time. Me personally, I like to take a little bit more time to like figure it out, and like, it's all trial and error at the end of the day. But in terms of like, as you were saying before, like sometimes you have to like take a bit of a step back and like you'll find inspiration elsewhere. Like I find like I get inspired more by things that aren't necessarily photography these days. Like stuff slightly related to, like, I know Andy actually touched on it in one of your podcasts about the CG and the blender and stuff like that. I had a crack at the doing CG stuff. I did the donut tutorial in lockdown. And I loved it, and it's something that I kind of put to one side up until recently, and I've picked it back up again. And I think going again to what he said in your chat with him, like almost like trying to future-proof yourself and like learn a new skill, I found myself being a lot more inspired and a lot more happy to crack on with things now that I've found almost like a different avenue. Also, I find like having a side hustle is also like a really good thing to have being in this industry, because the amount of people that I'll speak to and on their days off, they're, like I know stylists who are like creating like brands, or like they'll be doing like swimwear brands or kids brands and stuff like that. And on the days where like maybe they're just a bit burnt out from like going from one shoot to another shoot to another shoot, they've got something that they can come and sit down and be like, this is mine. I'm going to create this. I'm going to put a bit more effort into this bit here, there, and everywhere, and create this thing for myself again. I guess it's kind of like starting fresh. Like, again, it's that sort of that first feeling of like when you set yourself up as being a freelancer or, self-employed, and getting that sort of like, oh, I'm doing it. Do you know what I mean? I guess it gives you that sort of like almost like that little hit again.
I think you're right. So I can completely understand where they're coming from, because excuse me, I started the podcast because I like talking to people, and
we know that.
It's you're all fucking sick of my chat already. But like, and it's something that it's tech. It's a lot of tech that I don't fully understand, but it's great to learn something new. And I think that's how you keep your creative mind going. And it doesn't necessarily have to be photography, like you say. It could be like CGI, it could be anything. And I think these side hustles as well, something I've definitely noticed, is you need something that's a hobby that you enjoy. And if it makes you money, great. If it doesn't, you're doing it because you enjoy it. And I think that's, we can, as self-employed people, we can like hustle and hustle and hustle and hustle, but we still need something when our body's too broken to work, or we've got, hobbies, stuff that just makes our endorphins go ping, 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 I think that's important too.
I think that's the thing. Like, a lot of people will kind of turn to me and be like, oh, it must be great being a photographer because essentially you get paid to do your hobby. But there's a certain point where when your hobby becomes work, it's just work. It's not a hobby anymore. Like, people would always question me being like, why don't you take your cameras like everywhere with you? And I'm like, it's because I shoot Monday to Friday. I'm sick of holding a camera by the weekend,
My arms ache.
Like, don't get me wrong, I'll take it on like holidays and stuff like that. Like if I go away on a trip with friends, I'll always take my camera with me. But I'm not one of those people who's constantly got a camera in their pocket and they're constantly snapping photos. And I think, again, maybe I lost that along the way because I used to be. But again, like, burnout, even though it might be a personal thing that I might be doing for myself, I'd rather just be relaxing, to be honest with you, than like thinking. And also, like, if I'm sat there taking photos of like, say, like a weekend or something like that, I'll be looking back over my photos with a fine tooth comb being like, oh, is that in focus? And like I miss that moment with my friends where they were like laughing and joking and stuff like that, or like throwing up after too many pints. So I'll be self-critical over something that I should be seeing as, fun and a hobby. But I think that just comes with the territory of making a hobby your work. You become self-critical over even like the slightest thing for fun. 100%. I mean, I think
I've struggled recently because this is so elder millennial of me, maybe, but we're getting a new kitchen fitted, and I was sat there thinking, right, sat there in the kitchen place, and just like, Nath had sorted out the appliances because that's where his head works, and then I was like, oh god, but what colour do I have? Like, my stylist mind came into play, and I was like, oh well, that goes well with that, and then that goes, but oh, is that going to work in this lighting? And I was like, Charlotte, you need to think this is your house. It's not a job.
It's like, not an Instagram pic,
Yeah, it's not an Instagram pic. It's not like, it's not for a specific client. This is for us, and it has to like suit how we want to live and etc. I still went with a coloured kitchen, of course.
Nice.
But you know, I stood there for ages going like, well, which green? And Nath's bloody colourblind, isn't he? So he was like, look the same. Like,
the grey one.
Yeah. Is that one, like, just pointing at each one? But no, it's very difficult to turn it off, and then you walk into places and you're like, oh, that could be different, or that could be, you know, I mean, my fashion sense could do with a bit of fucking help, but
same here, mate.
Again,
not taking pictures of me. That's why I'm behind the camera.
Same. I think though that's why I'm mostly in like dungarees or cycling shorts and big t-shirts, because I'm comfy. I'm at work, and like, I'm fed up of looking at fashion, and also I'm not going to look good dressed as Mel C at work.
Oh, honestly, I feel like I feel like some people do it really well, where they work in the fashion industry and they dress so sharp. But for me, like I say, I try my best, but it's not always. It's not on par with a lot of other people, but no. I don't know. Maybe not everybody's like expecting you to be, you know, wearing the latest trends and stuff like that just because you work in the industry. You know, I think leave that to the stylists. You're gonna have to like dress up a lot better.
Oh, cheers. I think I've failed miserably for the last 10 years.
No, I think being comfy and work's like so important. Like, if I could wear joggers every single day, I think I definitely would. Yeah,
same. And I think also, like, with our jobs, when you're doing lighting jobs and I'm doing, like, say, interiors jobs where you're shifting stuff, you're sweaty, and the last thing I want to do is, like, I was going to say look like a hot mess, but you know, that's me every day. But no, like, just be dripping with sweat in some sort of like couture dress and heels. Like,
oh yeah, I never wear my couture dress and heels whenever I'm doing lighting. No,
that's just for the weekends.
Idea. That's only for the weekends. Yeah. No, I mean, like, you know, I just keep it simple. Do you know what I mean? White tee, pants, nice shoes. Can't go wrong. No,
that's it. And then, you know, you've kind of got, do you kind of have like a little work uniform? Because I kind of do.
Kind of, like I say, I don't know. You got me being like overly thinking about what I wear now. I don't know, just like trainers, trousers, obviously. And,
don't just rock up in your budgie smugglers.
No, that's not how it goes. And then like I say, I mean, I try and keep things fairly neutral. I wear a lot of black just because on sets, like, you don't want to be like throwing too many colors out there. I actually worked on a job once where it was a video job, and I was helping out the videographer as like second AC or something like that, and it was for a company that does betting anyway, for horse races, and on the advert, I think it was only a web advert, but I saw it out in the wild a couple of times. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And the videographer sent a clip to me, and he said, "You're famous now." And I was like, what's that supposed to mean? And I watched the clip, and at a certain point, you can see me in the reflection holding up a white poly to bounce light back in. It's only for like a split second. Like, you'd have to know it was there, but like for that split second, you just see me just staring. Like, that sort of like classic sort of like, I've been on set for far too long. I'm losing the will here. Let's just wrap and go home. But yeah, there's like a split second of me like in the reflection of this. I think it was like a weighing machine or something like that.
Oh,
so somebody had forgot to comp that out. But again, that's one of the main reasons why I usually wear black on things like that, because I wouldn't have been as obvious.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fucker for wearing leopard print or bright crazy t-shirts from tattoo artists and oh Jesus. The other day I was on a drink shoot and the brand manager was like, "Oh, you've got a tattooed sleeve. Would you mind just holding this shot and we'll like shot glass and we'll just take a couple of shots?" I end up doing like, I should have charged them for it really, bless them. I end up doing like GIFs where I'm like pretending to drink this shot. I mean, we were shooting it like midday. I wish I could have drunk the shots. And then she's like,
plastered at work.
yeah. And then she's like, "Oh yeah, and then can we just do another one of you like with your hand in?" I'm like, Jesus, I'm going to be tagging my tattoo artist in that. She'll love that.
Yeah, too right. But again, like, you know, if your tattoo artist sees that sort of stuff out in the wild, that must be great for them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I've been used as a prop, hand prop. I'm actually in a supermarket's leaflet this week.
Oh.
Yeah, just my hand, and it's like a big, it like looks like a big electric toothbrush cleaner.
Yeah.
But it's the hand that has no tattoos on it.
Oh,
or like,
okay, I see.
You know, so they were like, "Oh, can we use that arm?" Because there was no point.
Tattooed one.
Yeah, because there's no point getting a model in for like one hand shot.
Yeah.
But there's nothing more awkward than when a photographer's like, "Can you just move your little finger?" And you don't realise you've got your little finger out like you're holding a cup of tea for the Queen. And it's just so funny. Like, you think I think people think modeling's easy, but actually when they're asked to do like random weird movements, or they're like, "Your hand looks weird," and I'm like, right, but I need slightly more description than that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've been terrible for it before in the past, where like I've been trying to give model directions and I've just been like, "Yeah, can you just turn your leg the other way?" And they just like literally stop and stare and like look at me, and they're just like, what do you mean? I'm like, "Oh, just like, you know, to just go this way." And they're just like, "What?" So yeah, I definitely think that and funnily enough, I was having a conversation with one of the models earlier this week about this, because she works part-time, and I think a lot of her co-workers just get a bit jealous, and they're just like, "Oh, you just swan off and have your photo taken and then come back and, you know, must be nice," type thing.
Yeah.
But you know, you don't realize, like, they get up early, they're on set, they're being fussed over all day, people like jabbing things into their eye, and like, you know, obviously like, you know, people fussing over their clothes and then flashing lights going off or having to stand on set all day. It does suck. Like, it's not a walk in the park.
Yeah, absolutely not. And the amount of like accidental catchings of skin I've done in bulldog clips when you're like putting clothes, like
pinning,
readjusting clothes and pinning things and stuff. And like, I mean, it's great having your makeup done by somebody, like, you know, fantastic. But like, oh, to be that every day, their skin must feel so dry. Well, they've probably got good skincare regimes, but like, just to be, like you say, poked and prodded, made to stand in high heels all day.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Also, like, if the traveling around must get like really sort of like stressful as well, because this poor girl, she'd come up to Liverpool to shoot, and then she thought she was going to go back home, so she hadn't brought anything with her. But then they were just like, "No, you've got to," and she lived like on the other side of the country, and then they're like, "No, you're going down to London tomorrow." So she's like, "I've not got any, like, you know, I've not brought like my toothbrush and stuff like that. I thought I was just going for a job here." So then she's got to go from Liverpool back to the other side of the country, then back down to London the same night, and then stay over in London. And then, you know, it must, like, that sort of stuff like really takes it out of you. And I think, like, if you're a busy model, it's not just like, again, it's not a walk in the park. It's like we were saying before with like Instagram, you know, you don't see the side of like modeling where they're standing outside in the cold and at Christmas time, or like, you know, November for a last minute Christmas shoot, and they're freezing their asses off, and like it's like sleet outside, but the photographer's like, "No, we still need to get one more shot, it's fine, like just stay there," and they're like literally shivering. So it does suck, but
I don't, like, it's not something I'm envious of. and like doing this like shot thing where I had to like lift it off the tray and then up and then out. So it sounds super easy, but my hand was like shaking and I was like, oh, like just going, oh, wobbling all over. So I don't know how many shots the guy even got.
I know. Well, my sister does some modeling, and some of the horror stories of shoots that she's been on, like, you know, I couldn't be bothered with it at all.
Yeah. Same. I just couldn't be arsed. I couldn't be asked to be like poked and prodded. It was enough on my wedding day. That's enough. That's enough. It was lovely, but like... isn't it? He wishes he was prodding on the wedding day. Oh, bless him. But yeah, I totally get it. Like, and it's stressful.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's like econ model stuff, it's stressful, you know, like they've got to get changed super quick and they're like, we need 60 outfits and they're running, tearing about, and yeah, it's hard. And then they're like, oh, well, I can't eat pasta today because I just bloat up. And they're just constantly thinking
like lingerie
about
in the afternoon or whatever. No,
yeah.
It must be like, I think certain aspects of the industry are getting a lot better with when it comes to that side of things, like, you know, with like body image and stuff like that within the industry. But like, you know, certain places aren't, unfortunately, and certain places are still like, you know, keeping a certain standard. I think the UK is not as bad, but in other countries I know it's still definitely bad. But again, like, I'm not a model, so I can't really comment on it because I've not experienced it firsthand. But, you know, I'd imagine it must be really stressful, like constantly having to think about that sort of stuff. I love pasta. I love pizza. I'll constantly eat it at lunchtime and bloat myself up. It's the best thing to do after a long day of shooting. Do you know what I mean? Or half a day of shooting in my case. But I just don't know how they do it. Like, it's a hard enough world to be judged on your physical appearance anyway, without being in the public eye with your appearance as well. Because, you know, like, there's the whole fat shaming thing. There's whole like, you know, I've definitely seen as well, I've heard horror stories from plus size models where the agencies have been like, oh, well, you're too fat now, or you're too thin. And it's just like, they're still human, man. Like, too right.
Come on. Like,
I mean,
chill out.
That's the thing. At the end of the day, even like, you know, even like girls that aren't necessarily like curve models or plus size models, like they're, you know, these girls are still getting and guys as well, shouldn't just like leave the guys out of it, but like they're getting like sort of critiqued on their weight constantly, regardless of what kind of like quote unquote model, like kind quote unquote model they are. I think people definitely need to like realize, like you say, the people at the end of the day, and, you know, people want to eat pizza and they want to enjoy themselves, and I mean, like I say, I'm not a model, so I can't really comment on it like first-hand experience or anything like that. Unfortunately, I know it's hard to fathom, Charlotte, but I'm not a model.
I mean, you know, I've heard that there's good genes in your family, so I'm disappointed you're not on those books, mate.
Unfortunately, no. Skipped one branch and, like, you know, got to her, unfortunately.
Oh, bless her. Well, she can tell you all the horror stories instead. You can go beat all the horrible people up.
Exactly.
Go tell them all off.
Have you guys... Sorry, go on.
Carry on.
I was going to say, she's worked in the industry before she started modelling, in all fairness, so I think she had a good understanding of what it's like, because she used to do a lot of styling assisting and stuff like that. So she's used to set life. She's used to like what's going on there. But no, I think some of the stories she's told me definitely sound a bit rough.
Yeah, I can imagine. Have you guys ever worked together before on set?
Yeah, when she was assisting, yeah, definitely. We worked in a couple of the same studios. And it at one point, like I say, she came into the studio that my nan was at. So we had like, you know, 3 people from the same family in the same studio, so that was quite nice. I've worked with her. I love working with her whenever I've worked with her in the past. Unfortunately, I've not had a chance to work with her professionally in the sense of shooting her. but no, she's great. She's got she's amazing. She does a really good job, and she works really, really hard to do whatever she does. So even when she was assisting, she was fantastic at that. So yeah. She'd probably hate to hear me talking about her. But
hey, you're saying glowing things.
Yeah, I try.
So, you know.
Whether she'd say the same things about me, I don't know.
She'd be like, I hate my brother.
Yeah, he's fucking lazy on set.
He's so bloody annoying.
Yeah.
Oh. So I've got a final question for you.
Okay.
What's your favourite thing to shoot?
Oh, that is a tough question. In a professional sense, or like a personal sort of like sense, or what? Or should I do one of each? Do you think?
Do one of each.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is a tough question. I do enjoy shooting fashion, like e-commerce. You know, I do enjoy doing like location shoots. I've been lucky enough to do a couple of campaigns in the past that have like done quite well. You know, it's always nice like walking down the street and seeing your work up in a shop. Or
yeah, that's cool.
I was very lucky to have a shoot go up on a billboard in Liverpool as well, which is like my hometown. I can't say hometown, I'm from the world, so you know. But it was nice to be able to walk past that and like, you know, all of a sudden like catch a glimpse of it and just be like, whoa, like that's my work. And like, you know, it was a shoot that I was really proud of. So things like that, you can't ever really beat that. But I know everybody would always be like, oh, I'd love to shoot campaigns all day, every single day. But then I suppose, like, you know, if I was to do it all the time, it would kind of water down the experience, I guess. So probably that in a professional sense. In a personal sense, I think just a lot of travel stuff's been really nice. I've always taken my camera with me whenever I've gone abroad, or even on like trips with friends. I remember I was doing a job in Portugal, and one of the lads out there did some free running, and obviously because I had like a background in it, not that I could do anything, I'd probably shatter my pelvis just by like getting any like into a fast sprint these days. But he would go out there and he was like wanting to like go and train, so I took a load of photos of him while he was there, and still to this day some of the photos I've taken of him that which are like, I don't know, it must be like going on 5-6 years ago now, are still some of my favorite shots that I've taken.
That's nice.
Of him doing different tricks and stuff like that. And that was a really good trip because, you know, I could just, obviously I had the work side, but then, you know, meeting this guy and us going out and taking photos was really nice as well. And being able to like curate like a couple of different images. Yeah. I'd say travel stuff's always good, but again, I feel like that's the kind of thing that a lot of people will be like, oh, I love traveling around all over the place and taking photos all the time. But yeah, no, it's really good. I've been quite fortunate enough to be quite well traveled in my life, so I've been able to do a lot of things and see a lot of things and take photos of some of them.
Yeah, that's nice. I take so many pictures of like when we're abroad, much to the point that like all the pictures tend to just have Nathan because I'm taking all the pictures.
Yeah.
And then like we come home and make like a big frame of like I collage them out into like a big frame. Yeah. But yeah,
he's like, where are you? And you're like,
yeah.
I was there, I swear.
Yeah, I mean, like, bless him, I still need to train him how to take a nice picture on his phone. But no, like we're yeah, that's it. Like, get on the floor, shoot from the floor. But yeah, like it's nice to take pictures when you're on holiday. I feel like it's one of those things, isn't it? You look back on it in like 5 years' time and you're like, oh man, that was sick. Or
yeah, it's just great memories. It's like it's what photography used to be all about, you know, like capturing moments, you know, the classic Kodak moment, I suppose you could call it. Like, you know, it's things like that, like, and remember, like, you know, there's every now and then, I'm assuming a lot of other people's families will do this as well, but like they'll we like break out the photo albums or the photo box that we have, and there's something lost. I feel like the idea of like opening the photo albums and going through the photo albums feels so much nicer than like, it's nice to go back through like my Instagram and stuff like that and, you know, be like, oh, this was on this day, which I had to do before this because I couldn't remember when I first started in the industry, to be honest with you. But it's nice to be able to go back through that, but there's something completely different about opening up an old photo album and like seeing the date, like, you know, digitally ingrained in on the side, and like going through all those photos, and some of them are fucking terrible, like out of focus, you know, overexposed and all that sort of stuff. But because it transports you back to that moment, they're the best photos on planet Earth. Do you know what I mean? I feel like bring photo albums back is what I say. Well, this Facebook timeline and stuff like that. I sound like such an old man talking about Facebook's ruining photography.
Absolutely is. But I'm the same. Like when I went to mum and dad's, not at Christmas, but the time before, me and my mum shared like a bottle of wine, and we were pissing ourselves at the pictures in the family like photo box. There's some of my dad from the 80s. There's like us kids when we'd just been born, and like, you know, the dodgy haircuts and all sorts. And it's just, they're really good. And I think, like you say, there's something nice about feeling the pictures. It almost like does transport you back, and
too right.
It's just nice to share those memories, I think.
No, definitely. And I think like I say, I feel like obviously that was the only way to do it back then. Like whack out the film camera and snap off a couple of rolls of film. Whereas now, like, you can just whip your phone out and take about 100 photos in about 5 seconds.
Yeah.
But on the complete flip side of that, like, I've had people ask me before in the past, like, I'm going on holiday, what camera should I buy? And I've just said, like, what phone have you got? Like, you know, just take a phone with you. The phone cameras these days are so bloody good that, like, why not? And obviously, if it's more like they want to get into photography, I'll obviously go into depth and like what kind of DSLRs they could potentially buy. But half the time, like, you know, your camera phone captures those moments just as good as any other camera, and you're not having to faff about with 1,000 other settings.
Yeah, I like taking my SLR, but it's heavy.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I really enjoy it, but I actually took that with me over Christmas, and I tried to capture some shots of my really fast nephew tearing about. But I didn't really get it out that much. Most of it was on my phone. So
that's the thing, like, kind of for personal stuff and like out of work, like, phones are great. You know, taking photos on your phone is great. Like, you know, all the new camera phones that are coming out are so good that, like, you know, like, it would be rude not to. Obviously, when it comes to work, like, I remember there was a period in time where, like, people would be doing a lot of like social media shoots on the actual shoot on the phone, and, like, you know, like, posting it to Facebook, and, like, you know, that's a part of the industry that's kind of been taken away from professional photography, quote unquote. You know, which kind of sucks, but, like, again, I guess it's like, it's the times are a changing and stuff like that. It's like, it's easy, and like the social media teams are then able to like post the photos like straight away, so it's just easy, I guess.
I think it's reactivity, isn't it? When you look at things like TikTok and Instagram and stuff now, it's definitely so reactive that if they didn't do that, they'd miss a beat. And I think a lot of money comes from social media, a lot of sales.
Yeah, I'm terrible for Instagram. I've not posted a photo in, I can't even imagine. I don't actually even want to look, because it'll probably make me feel a bit sick, considering, like, you know, the amount of work that's out there through Instagram and stuff like that. But I'm so bad at it. It's one thing that I do need to get better at, is getting more content out there, because I know so many people who do it so well, and they're constantly working. You know, they're constantly doing this, that, and the other. That's one thing that I feel like I do need to get a lot better at.
I think,
again, sorry, all I was going to say is, like, again, like, when you have like a very well curated group of clients, and you're not necessarily like looking for new clients, again, I guess it kind of goes back to what we were saying before. Like, you can get to the point where you're just like, you're not actively looking to test, or for that new work, or for that, I find a lot of the time I'm not necessarily testing for work. I'm testing just purely for my own creative outlet, so to speak.
Yeah.
If I get work out of it, great. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I'm doing it for me and being able to like say I did it.
Yeah.
I guess.
I think as well, if these people are putting a lot of time into their social media, especially when it's part of our jobs to a certain extent, I would wonder how much revenue they're getting back from that. Because I think when it comes to our work, you kind of have to see an input-output thing and see how much... Because I don't post that much on my work Instagram.
Yeah.
I do on my personal one. But my work Instagram has bought me 3 new clients recently.
Okay.
So I don't know whether it's the hashtag, whether it's... I don't know.
Yeah.
But I see friends with like really curated ones, and I just wonder where's the trade-off, because it's got to make you a bit of cash. There's a certain amount of enjoyment within it, but if you're using it to promote for work, it's got to make its worth, because you can't go spending like a whole day on all your social media and then not actually getting any work back out of it.
No, exactly. And I feel like sometimes it's like you can get into that situation where it's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Like, did you get the work? Like, how do you get the work from social media without working in the first place to get that work to get put on your social media to then get work to then put on social? But then some people, like, this is where like the whole testing thing comes into place. Like, getting that work doing the work that you want to get will get you the work that you want to get if you try hard enough. That was the worst like inspirational line ever, like, but sometimes it is as easy as that, getting into those clients that like, do a shoot that resembles that client's work, and like they might see it on socials if you use the right hashtags and stuff like that.
And I think it's showing that you can do it sometimes before somebody, because we just don't run off sort of CVs, we run off portfolios. If you go to somebody and say, I can shoot interiors, but you've got no proof to back it up, they go, can you?
Exactly.
So I think that's it. It's finding that middle ground as such.
At one point I had a book that had in terms of like my model work, it had just campaign work in it and all like creative stuff that I'd done, and I was approaching a client about doing some just like day-to-day e-commerce for them, and they said to me like, where's your e-commerce work? And because I thought like, oh well, this is the work that I want to be doing, so I'm going to curate my portfolio to look exactly like this. And I was like, oh, like, I didn't say this to them, but I was like, in my head I'm going, oh, that's a good point actually. So now I've got like an e-com book and a campaign book, but again, like that's just comes through trial and error, through finding out situations like that. I think curating your book or your portfolio for the clients that you do want to get is super, like, obviously I feel like that's kind of goes without saying, but it doesn't have to be flashy. Sometimes it just has to be model on a white background, nice pose. Do you know what I mean? All the product looking fantastic, and that's all they're looking for at the end of the day. It doesn't have to be bells and whistles, somebody doing a backflip over a car wearing Prada or something like that.
yeah
Which
exactly.
I've just had an idea for my next test shoot now.
There you go.
I'll try and get an agency to send a model out for that.
There you go.
Yeah.
You'll have to sign loads of insurance papers, I'm sure.
I'll just get my sister to do it.
Be like, I'm sure, get practicing those backflips in the garden, hun.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, on that lovely backflipping note, it's been absolutely lovely chatting to you today, Jace.
Been lovely being on here. We need to work with each other again soon. I feel like it's been ages.
We do. Yeah. It's been way too bloody long. Bloody pandemic.
I miss you. I know.
Exactly. I miss you too, mate. Literally, Nathan's like, so all these people you're chatting to, you used to work with them, right? And I'm like, yeah. Or do work with them. And he's like, can you go and work with them again so my ears get a rest, please?
Get you out of this bloody house.
Yeah. He's like, I'm starting to need hearing aids. You're deafening me, hon.
Oh, bless. Nah,
Oh,
it'll
well,
happen
it's
soon.
been lovely. I hope, yes, we'll put it out to the universe. And it's been absolutely lovely chatting to you today, Jace. Thank you so
Lovely
much.
chatting to you as well. Thank you very much for having me on this.
Yay! Thanks. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please rate, follow and share, as it really helps this little podcast out. And if you have found value in the podcast and you have the means to, I do have a Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. This will help keep the podcast going. Join me next week for another fantastic guest. Bye!